down your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply.
Hi everyone, I'm Viticulture and you're watching The Broken Meeple, a show where I rave and rant about board games, usually more the latter. This is a new series that I'm kind of trialing for a bit. I mean, I know I tried to stop doing whole new show ideas because it does get a little bit too much work-wise, but I still want to dip my toe into other ideas from time to time, and I've mentioned on my podcast I wanted to try a kind of best and worst off series. So, focusing on primarily designers and publishers, but occasionally delving into mechanics if they fit. And basically just doing the best and worst from my own personal experience. This isn't like a definitive subjective list, it's purely from the games I have played, from these particular examples. These are my favourites and these are my least favourites.
Does anyone want to get out?
Now with this kind of idea comes its own fair share of problems. For example, designers. Designers occasionally co-design games, so do you go after the ones that they design themselves, or is it the fact that their name's on the box good enough for you? Publishers. A publisher might come out with a game, but then 7 other publishers might have also published the same game at some point, depending on region. Who do you go after? The original person, or is it fine that if your name is on the box, therefore it counts? And then mechanics, oh boy, you're in for a world of hurt with that one. Put it this way, go look up on Board Game Geek, on the advanced search, put in network connection, or root connection, or think of whatever it goes. And you would think, okay, games like Ticket to Ride should be the focus, right? And certainly they appear in the list, but then so do a lot of other games that literally have a tiny aspect where you might connect A to B on some Euro game with about 6 different mechanics. Is that what you think of when you play that game? And same goes for ones where games have a lot of different mechanics. I mean, worker placement. If you decide to do just worker placement, you're going to get stuff like Lost Ruins of Arnak in there. Now, Lost Ruins of Arnak does have 2 workers that you place down every turn. Is that enough to consider it worker placement when you've got the deck building part and you've got the the stuff you do on the board, you've got the research track? Is it really worker placement, or do you focus on something that is definitively all worker placement? It's hard to do, and so mechanics might feature a little bit less often than publisher and designer. But it depends on how people are flexible with the way I do this.
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
So on today's episode, we're talking about Stonemaier Games, a publisher of Stonemaier Games, and this is a publisher who, granted, I've given a little bit of flack recently, but they have been a very hit and miss publisher for me in terms of their games. And certainly when it comes to marketing, I don't think there's anybody better at marketing in this world. I mean, you want to generate hype for a game, talk to Stonemaier, because frankly, they could basically take a little pebble, give it to you, paint it blue, and suddenly make this the most desirable board game in the next year. Somehow they're able to do this with even the most basic of ideas. Kudos, they know what they're doing on the marketing front. With board games, it's definitely more sort of haphazard with me, but I do have enough to talk about my 3 least favourites and my 3 favourites. And certainly for this series, it's not always going to be 3. It depends. It might be 5, it might be 2. It really depends on how many examples there are.
5 is right out.
So we'll start off with my least favourite, and I am going to be ranking these, so this will be the 3rd least favourite, 2nd least favourite, 1st least favourite. And my 3rd one is definitely a game, and to be fair, I think all but my number 1. My number 1, nobody's going to give me flack for, but these next 2, I'm probably going to get some flack for. But hey, seriously, different strokes, different folks. But my 3rd least favourite is a sequel to another game that they published back in, I think, 2016, and it was a solid hit back then. This new one got everybody hyped because they thought, oh my god, it's in the same universe. We must have it. I must have it now.
This is actually a great game. I want to own this game.
So even though Ryan had the negatives, the dislikes,
Yeah.
he wants to own this one.
And this seems to be the way a lot of people do when these different IPs get used again. But this could have been its own thing. It really has next to nothing to do with the original game that it came from, and this is Scythe Expeditions. Expeditions has gone down well with a fair few people. Why these people are willing to play a 5-player game of this, I have no idea. I mean, the game itself is a bone dry sort of move around a bunch of hexes, collect a few, resources and cards, go to another spot, churn it in there, go to another spot, churn it in there. It's one of these ones where you run around the map going from A to B to C to D to E to F in order to build up your engine as you go through. But it's bone dry, the theme is barely there. They try to invent some kind of story progression from the original Scythe, but it barely even fits the universe it's in, let alone the fact that it's just pasted on, to whatever other dry game idea they had. But it just gets very monotonous and boring. I mean, you've got a couple of paths of victory that you can do. You can go really hard on, I forget what it is, like a sort of quest type cards. You can, churn together these special meteor rock cards that give you bonuses the more of them you play. There's several ways that you can win, but I find that doing that whole, churning the meteor cards, I find that seems to be the most powerful way to do it every single time, and the quest just should not be bothered with.
Look, let me go back in there and face the peril. No, it's too perilous.
The game is just very dry, very monotonous, and stupidly long. This one is crazy. It goes up to 5 players, and anytime a base game comes out with 5 players as a Euro game, you should run for the hills when it comes to 5, because never is the game designed for 5. It's put on there to sell more copies, or because there's some focus group out there who says, I want the game to be played with 5 because, I don't know, I got 3 kids and they're all Mensa students. I don't know, but it really drags on with 5. Frankly, the game drags on with 3. 3, 4, or 5. This game easily eclipses 2 hours, can go on to 3, maybe even longer than that. I've seen 5-player games of this not even be finished in the space of a 4-hour game night. This game just drags on and on and on with downtime that is crazy. Now, that being said, the reason this is not higher on the list is because I do like it, sort of, average rating at 1 or 2 players. 2 players, not too bad. Back and forth, the game doesn't drag out too long. I mean, you don't really have much in the way of multiplayer interaction in this anyway, so having 2 of you is better than having 3, 4, or 5. But solo, it's not bad. It's a relatively smooth AI. You do what it is you do in a multiplayer game pretty much 99%, and the AI gets in your way just as much as a multiplayer opponent would in terms of going to a hex you might have wanted to go to. That is the limits of their interaction, but at least you can get the game done nice and quick. But when you factor in how big the box is, it's a huge behemoth you've got to store on your shelf for what is basically another dry engine builder like all the others. And it's got, it's overproduced. Again, it's unbalanced, which is a thing that seems to be common in a lot of Stonemaier games. They can't seem to get game balance very well. And the 5 mechs that you have in the base game, they are wildly imbalanced. You look at the Board Game Geek threads and stuff like that, it is clear cut what ranking the 5 mechs are put in. There are 2 that are easily the most powerful, 2 that are easily garbage, and then maybe 1 or 2 of them might just tussle out for the 3rd middle spot. But why is it so hard to get that right? I mean, if they claim they do so much playtesting, how do these things not actually come out in the playtesting? I don't get it. But, some people really like this game, fair enough. But I see a lot of people not like it as well. I think this is quite a divisive one, so I'll probably get less flack about this as I will against my next one. But, again, different strokes, don't kill me.
Kill him now.
My second one is a game which, well, I mean, remember what I talked about game balance? This one takes the chronic piss when it comes to game balance. Oh wow, this is the poster child of how not to do game balance in your Euro games. It's so bad that the game over its lifetime has had to come out with at least, I think, 2 to 3 different errators in order to try and balance out the initial game, and it still isn't balanced. This was incredibly overproduced. I mean, you had these fantastic little buildings for sticking down on the map for no other reason than just simply to put them in little patterns. It was a dry, generic game, and for those of you wanting the title, it's Tapestry. And need I say more? This game was the biggest bait and switch I've ever seen. Tapestry basically gave you the idea of, oh, you're building up a civilization and there are these cards that you can really diversify the way that your civilization plays. No. Firstly, these civilizations, as I said, woefully imbalanced. There's a lot of them and they play very differently. Great. But they were not balanced at all. Some of them were just not fun, some of them were way overpowered, some of them were not even worth the cardboard they were printed on. So they errated it, probably within the first 2 weeks of its release. 2 weeks! I know it's not easy to balance a bunch of factions. Maybe A, you should keep the faction limit down so it's easier, and B, maybe just do more playtesting generally, because to release an errata within the first 2 weeks is insane. And they've done another one recently that you had to pay for. You had to pay for this like DLC or whatever, DLC equivalent, in order to fix them again. Seriously, why do people give this one a free pass? And then the Tapestry cards. Oh, it's called Tapestry, so you think these are going to be a big deal. It really isn't. You get 3 of them in the game, and you put one in, like between these rounds, you put one in front of you, it does some effect. Could be instant, could be ongoing, whatever. These, again, range from not worth the cardboard they're printed on to game-breakingly overpowered. And it's so clear which ones are better than others. You could literally just take 2 out of the pack and instantly go, this is fundamentally better than this one. I didn't need playtesting to do it. I could literally see it with my own eyes, and yet somehow this got past the quality assurance process. Again, why? But then once you get all the balance stuff out of the way, what exactly is the game? It's 4 tracks that you just spend time leveling up with a cube, and they're supposed to be like military and economic and science. They don't feel like the things they are. I mean, military just lets you put bits on a little map. You know, building allows you to put like stuff on a little pattern grid in front of you, which is like the most wasted potential for overproduction of buildings. I mean, the buildings in this are fantastic. Could you imagine if World Wonders by Arcane Wonders had these buildings in it? Oh my god, would that be amazing? And that's already a pretty well-produced game. But they're just so wasted here on this pointless little pattern building thing. And then on top of that, you've got the sciencing, which is die rolling for the most part. There's a ton of dice rolling to dictate bonuses you get. You don't want luck in a 3-hour Euro game. How's that supposed to work? And everything just felt like a bait and switch. It's like, here's a civilization game from Stonemaier Games. Nope, here's a dry track leveler with fundamental balance issues and dice rolling. I don't get why this one is popular. I can see why some people might like Expeditions despite its time length. Tapestry, I just see so many people give this a free pass or are so forgiving of it. They acknowledge that it's unbalanced, that it's basically just track leveling with some dice and stuff. But apparently that's fine.
And everybody's okay with this? Did I miss something?
Different strokes for folks, it just really didn't sit well with me. So my worst one, the worst game that they've done. Now, you're probably already hating me for the last 2 I've talked about. You ain't gonna hate me on this one, because I'm pretty positive there isn't anybody out there who A, has played this game, B, who's heard of this game, and C, probably still owns it and likes it. Nobody, knows this game's existence for the most part, and whenever I mention it, whenever they say, come on, name me a bad game by Stonemaier, I mention this one first, and they can't even remember it was a Stonemaier game, but oh boy, yes it was, Pendulum. Pendulum was the only credit I can give Pendulum, like the one piece of credit I can give this game, is that it tried an innovative new idea. It tried to make a Euro game using egg timers, where you could only do certain stuff on certain bits of the board if the egg timer was at a certain point, and you had lots of them and you were turning them round, and it was an interesting idea, and I give props for them trying something relatively innovative. But innovative doesn't necessarily always mean great. I just respect it when I see it, and hate it when I don't see it. But this game was close to trash. It was fundamentally boring. It is literally the driest of Euro games ever. Whatever theme they tried to paste on makes no difference. It wasn't even a looker. It was ugly as sin. The egg timers turned out to be a really fiddly process. I mean, imagine 4 of you on this Euro board trying to mess around with egg timers. Have you ever played Kitchen Rush or the Doctor's version, whatever it was called? I think Artibia Games did it, or was it AEG? I can't remember. But those games, you remember how chaotic those are? And that's a co-op. You ever tried doing it as a competitive game? It gets insane. And at the end of the day, all you do is level up a few tracks on your board and do Euro victory point stuff. So what you're doing isn't interesting, the way you do it is fiddly and annoying, and this game just got no buzz. I don't remember anybody coming out as a reviewer saying they love this game and think it's amazing. Every time I mention it, nobody's even heard of its existence. I'm pretty sure even Stonemaier Games are trying to erode this out of your subconscious, but I'm here to tell you, it existed, they made it, and it was crap. Alright, so that was easily my least favourite, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of people it's going to be the same for them. So yeah, I don't think I'll get too much flack with this one. Okay, well that's enough ranting. Let's now talk about positives. So yes, there are 3 games from Stonemaier Games that I sing the praises about all the time and think are fantastic. Now granted, there does seem to be a bit of a trend that the best games that Stonemaier have done other older games. The stuff they're doing recently is what's getting on my nerves. So clearly there was a tipping point where suddenly something went wrong and suddenly everything started crashing down. But suffice to say, I still love these 3 games. So my third favorite from them is this big box right here, and I can actually get these out because I do own them. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Big legendary Scythe box. Scythe used to be probably the number 1 that they did, but nope, this is my third favorite now. It has dropped a little bit. I don't get this one played very often, and typically it's usually somebody else's copy, but you know, I have got every expansion in here, so I've got, sorry, Fenris, the Encounters little subset, which is quite cool. I've got Wind Gambit, I've got the first one with the expansion factions. There's a lot in here, and certainly this box does contain a lot of stuff in here just to like really make it quite a fun experience. But you know, that being said, it's got insert metal coins, everything. I think I've even got a playmat somewhere, but probably not in this box. But the game Scythe is cool. It's an engine builder through and through, and you're trying to, you've got a faction and you're trying to get these different goals achieved. And the goals could be different, especially if you throw in a Fenris expansion, to change up what they do. But how you do it is going to depend a lot on your starting 2 boards. You've got a faction board and a kind of industry board, I guess you could call it. And with that in place, you then basically do one of the 4 actions on your board, top and bottom, but they're in different combinations for different boards and different players. And your faction will work differently. And it's very much a race efficiency game where you're trying to achieve those goals quicker than other players, but then even getting those goals finished first might not win you the game because you're going to score based on other stuff that you've done, whether it's combat or economy or area control on the board. You know, there's a lot of different ways that you can play it. Now, a problem that this game has is obviously with all this stuff in, it does become a bit of a bugbear to set up and teach and all that. You know, it is a bit hard to get to the table. It's not really a game that's really recommended solo either. But the other thing is that a lot of your game is kind of dictated by those first 2 boards. You can be the best Scythe player ever, but if you've got a combination of your boards that is absolute trash, you're at a fundamental disadvantage to anybody else that's in the game. There are even, again, going back to the whole game balancing here, some combos that are outright so broken that they are banned from competitive play. Yeah, it went that bad. So the game itself is still really good fun though. I like the efficiency puzzle, it's smooth. I mean, if you play this with people who have played the game before, this is definitely one of those I don't like to play with noobs, as you could call it. I want people who know what they're doing to play this, and I want to play like a big 5-player game of this. I have done 6 and 7, I did one 7-player in 90 minutes before, but that was because we all knew each other, and the person hosting the game is brilliant at moderating. I got to give him credit. So we went around at a massive, like really quick pace. But typically, I would love to play this with 5 players, you know, on a reasonably regular basis, with people who knew the game well, so we could throw in some of these expansions. Not so much the airships. I find the airships a bit of a waste. I like the new goals that the airships expansion brought in. Obviously, I like the 2 new factions. I do think that the green and the purple are a bit underpowered compared to the other factions, but they're still fun to play. I seem to do better with green than a lot of other players do. But I really like what came out of... Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. The Fenris expansion threw in a module where you had basically interchangeable goal tiles that you could put as those like the ones that end the game. Those are really cool to have, and I love to throw those in pretty much every game I can. Okay, spoiler alert, done. So yeah, Scythe, still a solid game, but just not one that gets to the table as much as I would like. But I still really enjoy this one. Alright, my number 2 favourite game that Stonemaier has ever done is, again, I seem to have them in very big crates for the most part, but this one takes a theme that I really like. In fact, one of my other sort of Euro games also utilises this theme. It introduced, you know, a really cool system of worker placement. It had a lot of variety. Now, it did need the expansion in order to make it as good as it is, as well as some of the other little extra mini expansions that came out. So it wasn't perfect originally. It got a lot better though. I still love this. Here we go. Oh, come on, big crate. Here we go. Viticulture. Viticulture, and I've got the wine crate here. Now, not all the Viticulture is great, okay? You know, some of those mini card sets were not great by themselves. They had some sort of balance issues, but and also the expansion Viticulture World was kind of ho-hum. Check out my review for more details, but the marketing for it and the controversy that happened with that was complete. What was going on with that? That made no sense either way, and I still have suspicions about that. But the whole expansion itself not really that worth it. You can play this co-op, it's not really a game I want to play co-op, and even though the expansion is in this box, I never play it anymore. I am done with the expansion. But the competitive game for Viticulture is still excellent. I mean, I have got, metal coins with their leaves on it. I have got all the expansions in here, all the sideboards, Tuscany, the works, and this one where you basically have a worker placement game where you go on these action spots in order to plant fields, plant the different grapes, harvest the grapes, and make different types of wine. It's just a very... It feels kind of zen-like to me, because even though you have to be efficient and do well in order to get the right wines and victory points, and timing and that is key, I just find this such a pleasure to play, because I like wine, and this kind of setting of a nice, lush green field of grapes growing in the sunlight and making a nice wine, even sipping a wine while playing this game, is just really, really nice to do. Now, I pretty much use, I think, the same combination every time. I always want to play with Tuscany. You gotta play this with Tuscany, it just has to happen. But I like specifically to play with not only the mamas and papas stuff, but also the orange buildings, the orange structure buildings, and the Tuscany board, like the big revamped board with different worker spots and the little map and stuff, is pretty much essential for this game. I don't want to play Viticulture without those things included. I mean, you could twist my wrist in order to get me to do it without the structures, but you've got to have that Tuscany board. If you don't have that, I'm not playing it. And also, cards-wise, I like to use either the ones that are in the normal game, because once you put in the new advanced stuff from the expansion, it gets a lot better. But also, I quite like using the Uwe Rosenberg set. I find that one to be not only quite thematic, but also probably one of the more balanced ones that was out there. The Visit from the Rhine, was fine, but I don't know, there's something about that one. It kind of gung-hos you into a very specific type of play, and I'm not sure it works as well. Whereas the Uri Rosenberg ones have a bit more variety, but they kind of gear you more into the whole point of making wine, which is, well, the whole point of the game is to make wine. As much as I have won some games doing weird stuff like building up a cafe and a restaurant and not actually making wine for actual competitors, I'm just literally putting them in my restaurant. It's cool that you can do that, but those cards at least try to gear you a little bit more to it. But I still really enjoy this one. I mean, I would never play this with 5 or 6, waste of time. You've got to play this with 2, 3, or 4 players. 4 players is a very good amount actually for this, but 5 and 6 is just way too much, way too long, too much downtime. And really, I don't know, from the gameplay perspective, the only thing that I can really fault is that I think that they put too much emphasis on having to get more workers. Worker placement games should be able to give you a good pro and con for getting more workers, whereas this one is, if you don't get more workers, you will lose. Hands down, you're just not going to win. You cannot win this game not getting extra workers. I mean, if you manage to do that somehow, I can only imagine that your opponents were deaf, dumb, and blind, because there's no way they should have messed up in that regard. But I do really enjoy this one. A great theme, great worker placement game. Viticulture still goes strong for me. And my favorite, my absolute favorite Stonemaier game that they've ever done, but do I really need to introduce it? You kind of know it by now. It's easily my favorite. It's one I've played, I think, 2 or 3 times in the last fortnight, actually. And that's not including the occasional Steam play, Steam app. I just really love this game. Do I need to say more? I don't need dragons. I want birds. Wingspan, which is not in the big nesting box crate that's in that cupboard over there, because that was a waste of money. A complete waste of money. The nesting crate is not needed. Check out my review for the rant on that. Although, when they release another expansion for this, I'm sadly going to need that nesting crate, because I've got everything up to Asia in here, in this box, with a folded space insert, no problem. Now, that does involve you having to chuck away the 6th and 7th player boards, because let's face it, the flock mode in Asia, who the hell requested that, and who is insane enough to play this game with 6 or 7 players? I've got all the rule books. I've got the, well, not all the rule books. I've got the main up-to-date rule books in here, the ones that sort of tell you a bit of everything. But just to prove I'm not lying when I say this, here we go. So I've got the Oceania boards, because I will pretty much only play Wingspan with the Oceania expansion in now. But there you go. Folded space. Everything is in here, and it is sleeved. I have got all the cards and the bonus cards in here. I've got these upgraded little birdhouse tokens. I've got all the bonus things. I've got the score pads, the original dice tower, which, granted, I would probably want to replace this with a wooden version at some point because it's starting to fall apart. I've got the nectar tokens, I've got all the eggs, or as many eggs as you need. I don't know if I've got every single egg that was ever produced, but it all fits in here. I'm telling you, you can do it. You just have to, you know, chuck away some of the stuff you don't need. I don't even know if I've got the, I have a feeling actually I might have also put in the spares or in a nesting box the Asia 1 to 2 player boards, you know, the new duet mode that they've done, because frankly this isn't really a game I play solo unless it's on Steam, and I don't play this game 2 player, and even if I do, I'd rather just play the normal Wingspan game. It's less to learn and less to deal with. So with that being said, you do have to make some minor sacrifices in order to fit it into one box, but for me they're not particularly big sacrifices, and everything, oh actually, I don't know. Oh no, there's the duet board, so actually perhaps the duet stuff is in here. I think I just got rid of the boards for the flock mode, and that was it. So, and obviously the rule books that I didn't need. But it all fits in here. But that's aside from storage, yeah, I love this game. This game is fantastic. An elegant tableau builder where you have 3 different actions, as well as being able to play birds, but you place them on the rows from left to right, and as you do so, when you activate that particular action, the actions are stronger for having more birds in that habitat. And then the birds themselves have got powers that when you play them at round end, at game end, when they're activated, when other players do something, is that there's all sorts of them now because I've got everything up to Asia, so I've got a ton of birds in here. And it's just smooth, elegant, and yet gives you a lot of meaningful choices and a lot of different paths to victory, especially with Oceania. That fixes some of the balance issues that, again, balance issues. Notice a theme here with Stonemaier. That, granted, the base game of Wingspan had some balance issues, but Oceania pretty much fixes those. Maybe not 100% entirely, but they certainly mitigate them a lot more. And so that is pretty much the main reason I won't play this game without Oceania now. But there's so many birds. Every time I play this game, I come up with birds that I've not seen before, that I don't recognize from some of the expansions, particularly Asia. You know, that doesn't, you know, they don't see the light of day too much because there's so many birds to get through and you're only going to see so much. So I've got endless variety in here. It is well produced. The theme is fantastic. I get like flavor text of all these nice looking birds. The artwork is sublime. Wingspan tried to replace this or tried to re-implement this. Check out my review for the reasons why it doesn't do that for me. I don't want generic dragons with lore made up that I don't need to know, that's like pointless anyway, with more fiddly faffy bits to contend with and a track to loop around. I don't need that. I want what Wingspan had. I love this game. Some people are sick and tired of hearing about this one all the time. I totally get what you mean by that, because at the moment I'm getting sick and tired of people talking about A Gentle Rain all the time, a game that I gave a 3 out of 10 to. Check out my old review for that I did in lockdown, but seriously, why the hell won't people shut up about Gentle Rain? But you know, I certainly hear it from this one as well. A lot of people are like, well, you guys just shut up about Wingspan right now. And that's fair enough. If you don't like Wingspan, I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise. You know, you don't like it, you don't like it. But I still really love it. It's one of those hyped up games that you won't stop hearing about, that I actually latched onto and went, yes, I agree with you, I love it to bits as well. If you don't, fair enough. But this one is probably going to be my favourite Stonemaier game, like, for life. I don't think it's ever going to drop. I don't think it's going to be topped. The rate Stonemaier are going with their games, there's no way they're going to put out anything that's going to top this. So really, the only thing I'm waiting for them to do is print out the other Wingspan expansions. I want to try Africa birds. I want to see if they can do like Arctic Circle and Antarctica birds. You know, they've got, the nesting box has room for other continents in it. I want to see those birds now, please. Can we have more of those? And don't give me more mechanics. I don't need more weird mechanics in the game. I think it's perfect the way it is. Why did you just give me more birds? Just give me more variety and I'm happy with that. So Wingspan, easily my #1 favourite Stonemaier game. So there you go, that is my best 3 and worst 3 from Stonemaier Games. Now, you know, some people will literally love to bits everything that they put out, which is fair play, good for you. For me, it's been a bit more of a downhill curve. They started off putting out some fantastic games. I love 3 games in a row that they did. Wingspan, Scythe, Viticulture. All 3 of them I think came out one after the other, and I loved them all. Still to this day, I love them all. But then something happened, and then all the other games since have either been bad for me or mediocre. I mean, the mediocre ones are things like the Libertalia reprint, Red Rising, as I said, Between Two Cities. What was that other one? The Charterstone. You know, that was a very average mediocre game. You know, basically teach yourself a dull Euro in 10 games. It's you know, not enough to hit my worst 3, but it came close. I did consider it. So yeah, they don't seem to be doing it for me right now, and certainly their focus on things like Expeditions and Tapestry and that, you know, these are games that I'm not a fan of. I want them to stop doing that. You've done all you need to do on Viticulture, leave it as that. You've done all you need to do on Scythe, leave it as that. Just give me more Wingspan birds. And if you're going to come up with a new idea, then try and come up with a new idea, because Apiary was not that one for me. I mean, it just felt like a lot of other games, and again, Apiary was just average for me. I've done a review on that as well. Check out that one. You know, it had some bits I liked, some bits I didn't, and it just came together as a, this is pretty forgettable. But again, everybody was hyped about it. Stonemaier is the king when it comes to marketing games. I don't know how they do it, but when it, you know, maybe they're not the best at designing games, but they are sure as hell the best at marketing them, and I gotta give them props for that from a corporate capitalism point of view. So, you know, they know what they're doing on that front. Even if I'm not falling for it, a lot of other people certainly are getting into the hype, and if you love all their games, then by all means do. You know, these best of 3 and worst 3 are not meant to be belittling anyone who like loves them all to bits. We all like different stuff, so if this is your favourite publisher in the whole world, then let it be your favourite publisher. You don't need to hear me say otherwise, or anybody else for that matter. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumbs up on YouTube and let me know down in the comments what you think of these games. Do you have a different best 3 and worst 3? I'd quite like to see your lists in the comments. Do you agree with my best 3? Do you disagree with my worst 3? That kind of thing. But also let me know what you think of this series in general. I mean, a lot of you were positive about the idea from a podcast. This is kind of the sort of format I'll do. It won't always be 3. It might only be 2, might be 5. It depends on how quickly I can do it. I mean, this video is already quite long for doing 3 of 3, so I'll probably stick to 3, but I may reduce it to 2 if there aren't that many examples of games that I can go from. So it really does depend. But if you like this idea of approaching publishers, designers, and mechanics from a slightly more condensed version from a top 10 list, which might be, you know, I don't know, I hear top 10 lists are getting stale. I'm kind of interested to know your thoughts on that as well. Do you really think that they're getting stale? Do you watch top 10 lists anymore? I've noticed my top 10 lists don't seem to be quite as fruitful as they used to be, so maybe it is time for a change. But well, let me know your thoughts. It will be interesting to read them. And of course, don't forget to check out the reviews I've done on the channel for games that I have mentioned here. I mean, I have done various Wingspans one, I've done Viticulture World, I've done Scythe Expeditions, I've done I don't think did I review Tapestry? I can't remember. You have to look that one up. But I've certainly reviewed quite a lot of Stonemaier games. By all means, check those out and see for yourself. So take care, and remember, regardless of whether you sit truly level or completely out of balance, it's still only a game. So bye for now.